So you've planned a trip to Disney World and you're probably picturing either what you see in the commercials where everything's magical, everybody's happy, you're riding the carousel with the princesses, or you may be on the other end of the spectrum and somebody roped you into going to Disney World and you're totally dreading it and you think it's going to be crowded and hot and miserable the entire time. And the truth is, reality is somewhere in the middle, somewhere between those two extremes. But today I want to give you some tips that will help you have the best possible Disney trip, especially if it's your first one. So I am Jessica, and this is actually my second channel, Jess on Main Street. I share more lifestyle content on my original channel, Jess in the Midwest, but I decided to split the two so I could really focus in on my love for Disney. So anyway, this is my first video on this new channel. So I hope that you guys will follow along and comment, and I'd love to connect. I love to chat with fellow Disney lovers. So I think the biggest thing that can really make or break a Disney trip are expectations. I think you need to go into it with healthy expectations, know that it is not going to be perfect, but it's also not going to be horrible. I'm going to go through all the main areas in this video, so hopefully I can set you up for success. You'll know what to expect and you'll be able to plan accordingly. So the first thing that can really affect your Disney vacation is the weather. So if you haven't been to Florida, especially if you're going in the summer months or any time of year when it's going to be warmer, which is most of the year in Florida. But it's probably, picture as hot as you think it's going to be, it's probably going to be even worse than that. I've been there many times in June. We went in July last year, and it is hot and it is humid, and it's hard to even imagine how hot and humid it is if you're not used to it. So you definitely need to have that in mind. You need to have that in mind, and you need to have a plan on how you're going to deal with that. I actually made a video on my other channel about how to deal with Disney World when it's really hot. So I will link that below. But there are things that you can buy or bring with you that will help with the heat. You can buy handheld fans. My family loves to use neck fans. They kind of drape around your neck and they blow air straight on your face. That was a game changer when we went last year. Cooling towels are great. Those help too. You wet them and they cool you down. You put them on your neck or wherever. We've used those a lot in the past. I'll link these all below. But yeah, there are things like that you can bring. Definitely bring tons of water. You don't want to get dehydrated in that extreme heat. So do those things, but also when you're thinking about your plan for the day, know that you're going to want to do some of those indoor attractions during the heat of the day. So that's why it's a good idea to research beforehand and kind of know what attractions are inside. There are a lot of shows at a lot of the parks that you can get in the air conditioning for, 20 minutes or so, get off your feet, reboot. So be looking for those things in the heat of the day. My family, a lot of times on those really hot summer days, we take a break, which I know it feels like counterproductive. It feels like you've spent all this money for this vacation, and it feels silly to leave the park in the middle of the day and go take a break at your hotel or your resort. But it could make all the difference in the world just to give yourself a couple hours to recharge, to cool down, and then you're ready to go in the evening. The parks are the busiest usually during the middle of the day, and they're the hottest, and everyone's melting down, including the adults. So I find that quality over quantity can make a big difference when it comes to time spent in the park. Now, if this is your once in a lifetime trip and you really want to try to do everything, then I understand not wanting to take a break. But I really do think it can really boost everybody's mood and energy level for the evening when you take those breaks in the middle of the day. Plus, if you're staying at a Disney, it gives you a chance to check out your resort, use your pool. I mean, the resort is part of the vacation too. That's why we love Disney World so much. So just know that it's going to be very hot, and use those strategies to kind of help you and get that mindset so you're ready, I honestly think that's one of the biggest things that can have a negative impact on your vacation is the heat. Along with the heat though, it could also be rainy. And I'm gonna let you in on a little secret that us Disney diehard people don't want everyone else to know, but rain can actually be a good thing. Even if it's pouring, like even if it's really, really raining hard, because first of all, in Florida, I mean, sometimes you'll have a day where it rains all day, but a lot of times just because of that heat and humidity, it's gonna rain for an hour or two and then stop. So what that rain does is a lot of times it cools down the temperature and it weeds out all the weaklings, all the people that didn't want to stay during the rain. And honestly, a lot of times we have our best park days after a big rainstorm. So a lot of people leave, the crowds thin out, and you're ready to stay for the rest of the day once the rain stops, and you have much shorter lines and smaller crowds. So don't be afraid of the rain. Again, look for those indoor places. Go to an indoor attraction or a gift shop or a restaurant or something during those times, wait it out, and then you're gonna have a much more pleasant time afterwards. And then I also wanna mention, I haven't been to Disney much in the winter, and when I have been in the winter, it's been warm, but I know that it can get cool in the winter, and I've heard that Florida cool feels much colder than other places of the country, again, because of that humidity. So in the winter, layers are gonna be huge because it could get up to 80 in the day, but then be 50 in the night for fireworks and you're just freezing. So bring lots and lots of layers in the winter. So be prepared, have your expectations set for those weather things, whether it's hot or cold or rain. One thing that can have a negative effect on your vacation, in my opinion, even more than the weather, are the crowds. My family has gone many times in the summer, and one time we went during the Christmas season. It was actually right after New Year's, but the crowds had not thinned out yet. It was miserable. It was just like wall-to-wall people everywhere. And we all agreed afterwards that we would take that heat over the crowds any day. So when you're planning your vacation, number one is check those crowd calendars online, look for times that are less busy. Honestly, this summer, even though it's summer break, it's less busy than a lot of those breaks during the school year, like spring break, Christmas break. Even weekends like President's Day weekend or things like that can get really crowded because people like to go when they're not at school. So we prefer this summer. But if you can plan it at a low crowd time, and I say low crowds, honestly, there's never really a low crowd time, maybe a couple days a year, but it still feels crowded most of the time. But yeah, try to plan it on a time that has low crowds. And if you're not able to do that, set your expectations, know that you're going to be waiting in long lines. It's gonna be just people everywhere. Know that going in, but there's ways to deal with it. So first of all, I'm not a morning person, but when I'm at Disney, I become a morning person because especially if you're staying on property and you can get into the parks a little bit earlier than the general public, you can get so much done in those first few hours. People don't like to get up early. They don't like to get going. So if you can be a little bit ahead of the game and you can get up early, be at the park maybe like a half hour before you're able to get in at least, then you're gonna be closer to the front of that line of people getting in, and you're going to be able to probably knock out quite a few attractions in the first hour or two without having to wait in long lines, even in those really busy times of year. Another thing is if you stay late at night until closing, I believe that even if you are in line for an attraction before, like a minute before the park closes, you can still wait through that whole line and ride that attraction, which is sometimes a good idea because the longest line of the day is sometimes waiting for transportation to get you out of the park. But anyway, yeah, early mornings, late nights, those are great times where the crowds are a little bit lower. You also might want to look into Genie Plus. So it used to be free to have fast passes, but now you have to pay for Genie Plus, and you can get kind of like fast passes throughout the day. Definitely isn't as convenient as it used to be, and then now you have to pay for it, which is super annoying. But We a lot of times think it is worth it. Our family thinks it's worth it to pay that extra price to be able to skip some of the lines, because it can totally change your day. You can do so many more attractions. And it depends on the park too. Look into it, watch some videos on GD+. There are some great ones out there. It is something to consider. It can really take down your wait time. I would also say if those big popular rides and attractions are high on your list of things that you want to do, try to make sure you're either rope dropping those, which means going to those first thing in the morning, or trying to get GD+ to ride those. Because otherwise you're gonna probably be waiting a couple hours for those really, really popular attractions. And another thing is, the time of day that I feel like things can feel the most crowded is during fireworks time. My favorite thing at the parks are the nighttime spectaculars and like the fireworks, and Happily Ever After is my very favorite. So I always like to kind of watch it on Main Street, but just know you're gonna be shoulder to shoulder. It's gonna be a little bit hard to see if you're short like me. So a couple times we have kind of skipped watching the fireworks, and we've been going through like Fantasyland or Tomorrowland or somewhere else in the park, doing attractions, but also watching the fireworks, and you kind of get a different view of it. You can't see the projections on the castle, but it's still magical. It's still fun. And those other areas of the park are not crowded at all when fireworks are going on. So that's something to consider. If you really get anxious in big crowds, you might want to watch the fireworks from a different place in the park. Also, the attraction wait times go way down during fireworks too, if that's not a big priority for you. If you've never been, I say you should probably try to watch them at least once, because it's truly like one of the best things at Disney World, in my opinion. But yeah, if that's really a deal breaker for you, I would go to a different part of the park. I would also say that if you do stay for fireworks, one of the most congested parts of the day, especially at Magic Kingdom, the other parks aren't quite so bad, but well, getting in and out of Fantasmic at Hollywood Studios can be kind of a nightmare too. I'm thinking specifically of Magic Kingdom. If you stay for fireworks, you want to probably either stay close to the back of the park so you can get to that exit as soon as possible once they end, or our family likes to just stay as long as we can in the parks. But our family, instead of following the crowd and going out of the parks, we like to kind of go against the crowd and go back into the parks, ride a few rides, and try to wait for those lines to dissipate a little bit. Unfortunately, at Magic Kingdom, the buses come straight to basically the park entrance. But if you drive there, you have to take either the ferry or the monorail back to the Ticket and Transportation Center, TTC. I'm not sure what the order of the words is, but we made the mistake last year of waiting for the monorail, and I feel like that took way longer than waiting for the ferry, even though we like riding the monorail a lot more than the ferry. So maybe consider taking the ferry at park closing, and just know you're probably gonna have to wait a long time, especially if you do wait for the monorails. So it's one of those times of day that there's really no way getting around it unless you try to stay as late as you can in the park. And then by the time you leave, there will probably still be a lot of people exiting the park, but it won't be as bad as if you leave right away. Another thing that you need to know going into your Disney vacation is that unless you're staying for like 2 straight weeks, there's no possible way you're going to be able to do all of the rides and attractions and shows and everything. There are just too many things to do, and you have to wait in those lines, and you're probably not going to get to do everything. So that's why you need to do some research ahead of time. Look at the rides and attractions, watch some YouTube ride through videos, and you can kind of see what is important to you, what rides and attractions are like must-dos for the days that you are going to be there. And I would say have everyone in your party pick out 1 or 2 things at each park that's really important to them. Maybe it's just a snack. Maybe somebody in your group loves food. That would be me. I also love rides and fireworks though. So Anyway, or like my husband, he is all about the attractions, especially those heavy hitter attractions, which I am too. So that's really important to him. Or maybe it's shopping. So it's really important to make sure that you let every person in your party kind of share what they are most looking forward to, what's most important to them, and then you try to hit those things first. And then when you have any extra time after that, it's just bonus. And then you can just kind of play it by ear and decide what you want to do after that. And those can be some of the most fun times when you're just being spontaneous and doing whatever. So I would say try not to plan out every single last minute of your day too, although planning is important. But in my memories, some of those most fun times are like the spontaneous times. So yeah, set your priorities, focus on those first, and then anything after that is bonus. You have to go in with that mindset, or you're gonna, at the end of the day, be like, oh, we only did these things and there's so many things that we missed. That's just the nature of it. They want you to come back. They're trying to get everybody to book another trip. And you know what? It usually works for our family. And speaking of time management, that kind of goes into my next point, which is don't forget to stop and enjoy the little moments. Disney has some of the smartest people on the planet that are Imagineers that are designing those rides and attractions and experiences for you. And I know there's so many heavy hitter rides that you want to hit, like Rise of the Resistance, Guardians of the Galaxy, Flight of Passage, rides like that, like are just, my mind is blown every time I go on them. But they're not just good at that stuff. They're also good at setting the mood when you're just walking from one land to another and you don't even notice the subtle differences that are changing as you move from one land to the next. They have so many ways to set the ambiance. They have, the music, the sounds, the sights, even the smells. They pump smells into different areas that they take everything kind of up to the next level. So don't forget to stop and take in your surroundings and enjoy those little moments too. Don't be just thinking about boom, 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 I got to get to the next big attraction. When I think back on Disney trips with my family, there are certain moments that really stick out in my memory. And it's not usually like, oh, I remember that time I rode Rise of the Resistance. I remember that time I rode Expedition Everest. I mean, I do, but the memories with my family that really stick out are like, I remember one Christmas, we were in Hollywood Studios and they had the Christmas projections on Tower of Terror, and every few minutes snow would start falling from the sky. And my daughter was probably 6 at the time, and it was late at night, it was past her bedtime, and the snowflakes were coming down and she was just dancing in the snowflakes. I could like cry thinking about it right now because it was just a magical moment. And if you stop and like enjoy and let your kids kind of take the lead, if you have kids, then you'll have all kinds of magical moments like that during your trip that have nothing to do with what you planned. I remember one time we just took the evening, right after we were there soon after Pandora had opened. So all the crowds were in Pandora, and we had been in Pandora most of the day too. But in the evening, we just went, there's little trails you can walk on around the Tree of Life. And we were just looking up the tree and we were seeing how many animals we could find carved in the tree. And I remember my daughter had this was back when I only had one, we have 3 now, but she had her bubble wand and she was just dancing around the trails, blowing bubbles everywhere. And that was not something that we had planned on our itinerary, but those are the moments I remember. So don't forget to slow down, look for those magical moments, take it in, because these are the moments that are going to be core memories for you. Why am I getting emotional? Okay, such a Disney person thing, but you never know when you're making a core memory for you or for your kids. And that's why my family continues to go to Disney. Another tip I have this is kind of more the negative end of things, but expect meltdowns. And I am not just talking about the kids. I mean, definitely the kids, yes. I always say there's like a time in the day, it's like around 11 a.m. probably, where you just can look around and you just see everyone starting to melt. Everyone's starting to melt down, like from the heat, melt from the heat and melt down from the overstimulation and the humidity and just the, it's a lot. It really is a lot. I feel myself starting to get really just short with my family. I can like feel it coming on. I'm like, all right, we need to take a break. Because if I'm feeling like that, how much more are my kids probably feeling like that? So just know it's not going to be, every moment is not going to be magical like I was just talking about. There are those moments where your kids are, something scared them in the ride and they don't want to go on any more rides that day. Or you bought this big expensive meal for them and they won't eat any of their food. And I mean, those things are definitely going to happen. Disney World is overstimulating for me as an adult. So for a child, it's so much more so. So just know it's going to happen. Just, don't get super mad. Just try to, I know you can't always control it, but just be expecting those things. A lot of times I find, if you don't, first of all, taking a break in the middle of the day is the biggest way to fix those meltdowns, I think. But if you don't have time for that, or if it's not that time of day, I feel like a snack can help a lot of times. Sitting down can help. Going indoors where it's a little bit cooler can help. Buying a little souvenir can help. No, like that can get expensive. Don't do that every time. But a little bribery doesn't hurt. But anyway, those things are going to happen. So just know, be prepared and kind of have a plan to deal with them, especially if you have kids. Adults, like I said, I do have little meltdowns. I think we all do at Disney, but we're better at regulating our emotions. So especially if you're a parent and you have kids, just know, have a plan going into it on how you're going to deal with those meltdowns. A snack can go a long way. And just a couple other little areas that I think, if you do a little research ahead of time, it's going to help a lot. And the first one is food. If you haven't researched a little bit about the food, you might end up eating, French fries and chicken nuggets all week, because there are a lot of places that just have French fries and chicken nuggets. But if you really do some research, there are some really excellent restaurants at Disney World. Especially in Epcot. Make sure you're not sleeping on Epcot. Know that it's very expensive. Sometimes snacks can go a long way. I might do a whole video about the Disney dining plan and whether I think it is worth it or not. But little known fact, you can bring snacks into the parks. You're allowed to bring outside food and drinks into the parks. So make sure you're doing that. Bring lots of snacks, and then that way you're not going to have to spend as much. I would say maybe prioritize a couple things, a couple snacks, a couple meals and restaurants that you want to go to. If food is a big deal to you, then budget a lot for food. If you're like our family and we just don't want to spend as much on food, we'd rather spend our money on like Genie Plus to make our day go a little smoother and fit a little more into the day. We do a lot of quick service, a lot of snacks, and maybe one or two more expensive sit-down meals. Your character meals are going to be really, really very expensive, but you're paying to meet the characters. Instead of standing in a long, hot line, you get to sit there and eat your meal while they come to you. So, pros and cons. So something to think about. So just do your research ahead of time. Also, the characters, I feel like in the Disney commercials, the characters are like riding the carousel and just dancing around the parks. And it's not like that. They're usually. I did have one time when Peter Pan must have been just coming back from Neverland into the Magic Kingdom. And he just happened to see my daughter right as he was coming out, and he started talking to her and he walked her to Fantasyland. So sometimes you'll have moments like that. That's not usually the case though. Usually you're gonna have to wait a long time in those lines, and know ahead of time that especially when it's really hot, the characters can only stay out for a little while before they have to, go back and do something. And then they'll come back out a few minutes later. So that feels really frustrating when you're next in line and Belle has to go talk to the Beast or something for a few minutes. It is very frustrating, but that's a part of it. So just know that going in, you might get stopped. You might have to wait a little bit longer. That's why those character meals are sometimes worth it. One day our family went through Epcot and we just wanted to, you can meet a bunch of the princesses in Epcot, and that was like our goal for the day. We're just gonna meet as many of those princesses as we can. And we ended up hating that day so much. We got so many great pictures. My daughter loved it, but we waited in so many hot lines. So sometimes the character dining meals are worth it, especially at Cinderella's royal table. You can meet, I believe you can meet the princesses. I'll have to look into that. I know for a while there after 2020 you couldn't. I'll have to look into that. And Akershus, I think too, in Epcot, you can meet a lot of the princesses. So think about that. What's important to you? What would you rather spend more money on versus waiting in a longer line? So I think that's mostly what I wanted to share today. I feel like every little point that I spoke about, I could do a whole entire video on each point, because this is kind of the Reader's Digest version of everything, and I'm sure I'll do more specific videos in the future. But today, for my first video, I just wanted to give my general overall Disney tips, because if it's your trip, I want you to have a great time. I don't want it to be miserable for you. It's very expensive. You paid a lot of money to go, so you want to have the best time possible. So just know that there are some hard things, there are some not fun things. Hopefully I've given you some advice to kind of deal with those. But my number one tip is just to stop and take it all in and enjoy those little magical moments with the ones that you love. And that's the whole reason that we go on vacation, and to Disney World specifically, is to make those memories and spend that time with our family. So don't get so caught up in the little details and feeling like you're not getting enough done. Just stop and enjoy it. And I hope you guys have a great first trip. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm gonna be making a lot more videos about Disney tips. My baby is starting to wake up in the background if you hear. He's not quite awake yet, but he's about to start crying, I could tell. Anyway, let me wrap this up quickly. I'm gonna be sharing a lot of more videos about tips and tricks and a lot of vlogs. My husband and I went on an anniversary trip over the summer, and I think I'm gonna be sharing some of those vlogs over here. And then we have another trip on the books in a few months too. So I'll be sharing a lot of content then. So subscribe if you wanna follow along and if you want a lot more tips about Disney World. Thanks.